I'm Rupert Read. I'm a recovering academic. I've worked with Helena Norberg-Hodge for many years. I helped to launch Extinction Rebellion. I now have just recently launched the Climate Majority Project, which seeks to bring the absolutely necessary project of the changes we need to stop climate collapse to most people rather than just a minority of committed activists. And I'm the author of a number of books, including most recently, Why Climate Breakdown Matters. So our idea in the Climate Majority Project is that there is no getting through this without most people on board. The climate crisis, which is at the center of the multiple crises that we are facing, it permeates so many aspects of our lives and is permeated by so many aspects of our lives that there just isn't any way there can be a technocratic or centralized solution to it, even if that were desirable, which it's not. It's just not possible. It's not like the ozone hole, for example, which was essentially solved by governments and corporations negotiating with each other. If we're going to get through this, then we have to have most people actively on board. That's a very big ask, but there's no smaller ask which is worth making. So that is the project of allowing the emerging climate majority to fully know itself, to fully step into its own power and to, well, change the future. We are horrendously caught in cycles of addiction, which is one way of describing what consumer culture is. At the same time, though, it's very fragile, I think, because most people know that this can't last. Most people sense that it's not really satisfying them or anybody else. Most people have a chasm and absence of meaning in their lives. And this is one of the things which is so exciting about this moment that we're in. The moment drips with meaning, actually, if you turn and face it. And so in the Climate Majority Project, we are offering people the chance to re-suffuse their lives with meaning again. For example, young people who are facing a desperate and uncertain future, whatever path or career, if there are going to be careers they choose, that can be a meaningful path if it's a path that in a meaningful way intersects with the multiple crises that we face, and climate at the center of it all. So whether you're choosing to be a teacher or a farmer or a full-time activist, a lawyer, whatever it is, there is a path for you to take that fully steps up to and faces the moment that we're in. And that path is a path that more and more people are taking with more and more of their time and more of their energy. And this is only going to grow and grow. So in the absolute heart of darkness of this crisis of meaning that defines our civilization, there is a different path that is starting to emerge. And that's why I think that even though consumerism seems to have us in such a tight grip, actually that grip may be a lot more fragile than it seems. The civilizational crisis that we are in, the fact, and I argue that it is a fact, that this civilization is coming to an end, and it will either give birth to a new civilization or it will vanish without trace. This fact is a fact that gives birth to the spiritual possibilities that are now emerging. There will certainly be an upsurge in eco-spirituality, for instance, over the next decade or two. It's already happening and it's only going to grow. And that is something positive, very positive, amidst the darkness. And that's going to be at the heart of my next book about the eco-spirituality that our times are calling for and starting to manifest. I also take great hope from the fact that the very travail that we are in is pregnant with meaning and purpose and what can come out of it. I mean, for instance, the climate disasters that we're being hit more and more frequently with. People are still not clear enough, and that clarity will come, that these disasters, well, firstly, that they are climate disasters, and secondly, that disasters are obviously disastrous, but they also invariably have the potentiality for a silver lining. People, when they respond to disasters, they find community, they build community, they find meaning, they build meaning. You see this over and over again. For instance, I remember very vividly a conversation with a dear friend of mine in New York City in early 2002. And this friend, I said to them, God, it must have been so deeply terrible to have been in New York for September the 11th, for when the Twin Towers fell, all those people dying and you fearing for your life probably, and then the hateful response of the state and much of the media. And he said, you know what, Rupert, it's the one time in my life that New York City has felt like a community. People spoke to each other. They helped each other, complete strangers, helped each other in big ways. And this just happened spontaneously, and it happened over and over again for days on end until normality started to return. And that is the spirit which we are going to find again and again in the terrible climate disasters that are here and the worst ones that are coming. Similarly, the very difficult emotions that our time inevitably produces, senses of heartbreak and desperation and depression, these too, I argue, in my work, can be the very sources of our salvation. These ideas, these practices came to me from my teacher, Joanna Macy. I now practice and teach them myself. I write about them at great length in Why Climate Breakdown Matters. And they are going to be writ large across our culture. These difficult emotions, which are all based in love. You know, we fear for those that we love, including ourselves. We're angry because those that we love are threatened. We grieve for what we love that is lost or in mortal peril. These difficult emotions, which all emerge from love, they are going to be the great source of energy and power and inspiration that we have, that we will naturally have more and more of if we just allow ourselves to open to them in the times that are coming. So I myself, and more generally in the Climate Majority Project, we are very ruthlessly realistic about the difficulty of the time that we are in. And we are also hugely optimistic and excited. We're thrilled about the human potentialities which are already emerging and the greater ones that will come as this crisis deepens. Grief is a beautiful phenomenon to watch. You know, obviously it's a terrible phenomenon to have to watch, still worse to endure. But it's also beautiful. If we didn't grieve, we would not be human beings. Right? Someone who doesn't grieve is someone who has something wrong with them or some kind of monster. So as we experience ecological grief, and it keeps on coming and it keeps on coming, climate grief never stops. That's its distinctive feature. As we experience it, we can remind ourselves sometimes that this is something deeply human and beautiful and profound, and that can help us to work with it. Disaster and peril remind us of our humanity, remind us of our dependence upon each other and upon the earth that is mother to us all. I've written about this at some length with localization advocate Christian Steele. I've written about it at even greater length in Why Climate Breakdown Matters. This is one of my great hopes for our time. People ask me sometimes, Rupert, sometimes when I listen to you, it seems like, God, things are really grim. And I say, yeah, things are really grim. And in that very grimness, if we respond to it in the right way, lies our salvation. In those disasters, in the difficult emotions we're exposed to, in coming to terms with what we've done to other animals and other peoples. These terrible things are also wonderful things waiting to happen and waiting to be realized in the rest of our lives. And you know what? People are longing for community. They are yearning for community. They realize its absence. More and more of us realize it in one way or another. And that is one of the basic drivers of the power of the localization movement. And one of the reasons I so strongly advocate the program, if you will, of relocalization, that is going to return us to and rebuild community. It's a beautiful thing. It's what people's hearts are longing for more, I think, than almost anything else. So in the Climate Majority Project, we argue very strongly that the main way through what is coming is collective. That doesn't mean the same thing as state, although the state obviously has an important role. Doesn't mean the same thing as international or global, although obviously global solidarity is crucial. What it means is people doing things together, typically people that they know or are in some way connected with. It's going to happen in our communities. It's going to happen in our schools, in our hospitals. It's going to happen in our workplaces, our businesses, in our professions, in our churches, in our civic institutions. At that kind of middle level, where people are with other people who they know. It's not going to happen primarily at a personal, individual level. And if we outsource it to the state or to international institutions, again, we're going to be by and large bitterly disappointed. But if we work together with other people collectively at the community level and at other levels where we naturally have affinity with other people, then there is a real chance. And in the Climate Majority Project, we're trying to network those strong ties that exist between people in their communities, in their workplaces, in their churches, anywhere where people are gathered together in sustained ways. That's where our greatest chance is for saving ourselves from the grave difficulties that are coming down the pike at us. So here's the good news. The future is definitely going to be more local. That is a fact. It's not just an aspiration. It's a fact. The not so good news is that right now, the more local future that we're headed towards is a purely post-collapse future. Because of course, if we experience an uncontrolled collapse event or process, it'll definitely be a more local future that emerges. The question, the challenge before us is, can we beat collapse to it? Can we be wise enough and practical enough to voluntarily, collectively, co-create a future which is more local because we choose it? That is the only way we get to create a future which is not a future dominated by civilizational collapse. If together, collectively, we demonstrate and then choose a civilizational future which is multiple civilizations, multiple communities, multiple localities, living as if the future matters and they care about it enough to preempt collapse and create the more local future that our hearts know is possible.